Why is it so difficult for us to be alone and enjoy our own company? On the other hand, what can we do to encourage this attitude in our children from a young age? It's challenging for us because it's not something we've been taught. Ultimately, when we go to school, we're taught to socialize with our peers. In fact, part of school is designed to teach us to be active members of society and, above all, to interact with others. The family does the same. They introduce us to family friends who have children our age, teaching us to be with family, to be with friends, and over time, it's expected that we'll have a partner, a relationship, and even have children, so everything becomes very social, right? We are directed towards a completely social life. That's fine. But at no point are we taught to be with ourselves, to introspect on who we are, and to get to know ourselves, right? When I was a child, on Sunday mornings, my mother would take me to a bookstore, and we would buy a book for me to read that week until the following Sunday. It was lovely because I went to the bookstore calmly, flipping through books like Kika Superbruja or Geronimo Stilton, smelling the books. Geronimo Stilton books have a distinct smell, and deciding which book I wanted. I could spend an hour turning pages, touching books, smelling them, looking at the pages they had. And I remember that I would take a shelf, empty it in the bookstore. They were already familiar with me, and they wouldn't say anything, but I'd empty the shelf and arrange the books in order, like, this is the first book I want this week, this is the next one, this is. I'd sort them and say, okay, I'm going to take this one this week, and next week I'll take the other one because they didn't let me buy two at a time. So, that moment of choosing a book was a moment for me. It was a moment of questioning what I wanted to read that week, what story I wanted to learn from, what I would be thinking about that week. Because my mother gave me that week to read it. If I hadn't finished the previous book by the next Sunday, I couldn't experience that moment of going to the bookstore and looking for a new book because I hadn't finished the one I had bought the previous week. So, because I loved that moment of choosing a book so much, I would make sure to read it from Monday to Friday so I could relive it. I believe it's necessary to instill such moments in young people. Moments of choosing a book, reading it, paying attention, painting, drawing, and even meditating. Until a few years ago, when you mentioned meditating, you'd picture a Buddha. It wasn't something normalized. And today, we talk about mindfulness and say, well, meditating, being in the present. Being in the present activates the parasympathetic system, bringing us back to calmness. Washing the dishes. I realize that when I get home, I wash the dishes with music. When I shower, I listen to a podcast. When I drive, I blast music, sing along, and when I go to bed, I watch a series. And when there's absolute silence in my house because I haven't put anything on, I feel uncomfortable because I haven't been taught to be in silence, to wash the dishes and notice the water's temperature, the amount of soap I use, whether the plate is clean or not, how to arrange it so it doesn't all fall and break. And I believe that children should be taught these moments. Children, teenagers, but especially, I would emphasize starting from childhood, right? Teaching them these moments for themselves, to take their time. It might sound trivial, but to choose the soap they like, to apply lotion, to comb their hair calmly without rushing to get to school, no, to choose their school clothes the day before. What do you want to wear tomorrow? Let's see, what subjects do you have? Do you have physical education tomorrow? Well, let's see, what will make you more comfortable? And then, what little jacket are you going to wear? And then, helping the child have spaces for themselves, to connect with themselves, and to stop living on autopilot and return a little to the present and calmness. Many of the people in our lives were not chosen by us, and some were. How can we create healthy bonds and consciously choose people? I consider that the key is to know oneself in order to know what someone like you needs. That is, someone like me, at this moment in my life, what do I need? Perhaps there was a time in my life when I wanted to surround myself with more lively, party-loving, more active, more extroverted people, right? And this provided me with what I wanted at that moment. But now, I may be in a stage of my life where I seek peace. I always say that people come with a soundtrack, okay? And there are times when you want your life to have the soundtrack of Avicii or David Guetta, and that's what you desire at that moment. But there are times in life when you want the soundtrack to be Ennio Morricone. So, you have to be able to select people who can create the music you want to be the soundtrack of your life at this moment. And for that, besides knowing yourself, you have to set boundaries. Because there are people who, no matter how good they are and how much they love you, and whom you love, will cross your boundaries. It happens. But for that, you have to communicate to them, look, this makes me uncomfortable. This hurts me. I don't like this. I need you to change this. And someone who loves you, a good person, will accept that you set boundaries because if they don't, it means they benefited when you didn't have them. Someone who loves you will not continue to do something that harms you knowingly when they can change it. So, it's essential to say, okay, I know myself, I know what a person like me needs, and with the people I allow to be part of my bubble, my life, I have to set boundaries to teach them how to treat me as well. Because maybe I have a friend whom I love very much, but she's very direct. Sometimes, she makes comments that hurt me because I'm sensitive, and I can say to her, look, Marta, I love you a lot, but do you know what happens? When you respond this way, it hurts me, and I would appreciate it if you could please consider how I am, you know? So, setting boundaries is crucial to building a healthy environment. And building a healthy environment also involves making good personnel choices. Your life is like a company. In your company, you're not going to hire just anyone. You're not going to let in the first person who hands you a resume. No, you're going to conduct a personnel selection process. That personnel selection process also applies to friends. You have to choose the people you allow to be part of your life because you have to understand that being part of your life is a privilege. You are deciding that someone spends time with you, time you won't get back. Therefore, it's a privilege. Perhaps you've gone 6 years without doing any kind of personal cleanup, and you realize that there are people who are no longer on the same wavelength as you, that you've evolved and they haven't, or they've evolved in a different direction, that you don't like what they've become. So, I believe it's also important to clean up your personal circle, to say, okay, these people once made me happy, but not anymore. Therefore, there are certain company I will distance myself from. So, we could summarize it a bit as, getting to know ourselves to understand what we need, setting boundaries, and cleaning up our personal circle. Not always dragging along the same people throughout life because we evolve, and our relationships have to evolve with us.